there are shops, and then there is Marks and Spencer. For most of us who grew up in 1970s Britain, M&S wasn't just a place you bought things. It was a standard, a benchmark, a quiet, unspoken promise that what was inside those green bags was the best you could get without being posh about it. It was Britain's shop. Full stop. But here's the thing. The M&S we knew, the one our mothers trusted with their lives, the one our dads wore to weddings without a second thought, that version is gone. Not struggling. Not changing. Gone. And understanding why it mattered so much means going back. All the way back to those cold Saturday mornings, the biscuit tins, the wool cardigans, and a little green label that once meant everything. Body, Theme 1, the Saturday ritual. You push through those double doors and the warmth hits you immediately. Not just temperature, something deeper. The whole place smells of clean cotton and something faintly floral from the lingerie section on the left. The floors shine, the lighting is bright but not aggressive, and there are women, dozens of them moving between rails with a quiet, purposeful confidence. This is 1970s Britain and Saturday is sacred. Your mum doesn't browse, she shops. There's a difference. She already knows where everything is. She could walk this store blindfolded and find the St. Michael knitwear in under 40 seconds. She touches a cardigan's sleeve, rubs it between thumb and forefinger. Nods. That's the whole review. That's all she needs. A woman named Dorothy, a school dinner lady from Coventry, once told her daughter that she trusted M&S more than she trusted her own GP. The GP might be wrong, she'd say. M&S never are. That wasn't unusual thinking. Not then. Body. Theme 2. The St. Michael promise. The label said it all. St. Michael. Registered back in 1928 and stitched into virtually everything M&S sold, the St. Michael label wasn't branding in the modern sense. It was a guarantee. It meant the fabric had been tested. It meant the seams would hold. It meant that cardigan you bought in 1973 would still be keeping your grandson warm in 1991. And the prices were real. Not aspirational. Not intimidating. A lilac Shetland wool polo neck from the young St. Michael menswear range cost you 2 and 15 shillings. Navy velvet flares, properly cut, beautifully finished, just 5 and 15 shillings. For a Saturday night out, gold evening shoes at £4.99 finished the look. These weren't bargain bin prices. They were honest prices for honest quality. Then came Crimplene. Developed by Aichi at their Crimple Valley factory near Harrogate, it was M&S's great practical miracle of the early 70s. It didn't crease. It didn't need ironing. You could wash it, dry it, and wear it again the same afternoon. For a generation of British women running households on tight budgets and tighter schedules, Crimplene wasn't a fabric, it was freedom. But then M&S went further. In the early 1970s, they introduced machine-washable wool. Machine-washable wool. Half the nation exhaled in relief. Suddenly, the thing you loved but feared, that beautiful, awkward, hand-wash-only jumper, was manageable, wearable, lovable without consequence. This was a shop that listened. Body, Theme 3, the food revolution. Now, let's talk about the food, because this is where the story gets genuinely remarkable. In the early 1970s, most British households ate what their mothers had always eaten. Tinned peas, shepherd's pie, a Sunday roast that could anchor a small boat. Adventurous meant a prawn cocktail. Foreign meant spaghetti from a tin. M&S changed that. Quietly, stubbornly, brilliantly. By 1972, the M&S Food Technology Department had done something no major British retailer had attempted. They printed sell-by dates on their food packaging. It sounds ordinary now, because we can't imagine food without them. But in 1972, it was revolutionary. Other retailers eventually copied them. Governments eventually made them law. But M&S got there first. And then came 1974. Around that same time, with package holidays opening up a generation of British palates to the flavours of the world, M&S launched their first range of frozen Indian meals. Chicken korma, pork vindaloo, foil wrapped, boil in the bag, ready in minutes. For most families in Britain, this was the first Indian food they had ever tasted, and they tasted it standing in their kitchen in Wolverhampton or Wakefield, pulling a foil tray from a pot of boiling water. Not a restaurant, not a takeaway, their kitchen, their pace, their terms. By 1980, M&S went one step further and became the first British supermarket to sell packaged sandwiches. The ready-made sandwich. Another thing we take completely for granted. Another thing M&S invented for us. We didn't just shop at M&S, we learned to eat from M&S. We learned to expect more from our food because of M&S. Body, Theme 4, The Peak, AN The Hubry. Fast forward to the 1990s. By now, M&S has become something no British company had ever been before. In 1997, under the chairmanship of Sir Richard Greenbury, it became the first British retailer in history to report annual pre-tax profits of more than £1 billion. £1 billion from one retailer in Britain. The following year, 1998, the numbers were even more staggering. Sales of more than £8 billion. Profits approaching £1.2 billion. At the time, only Walmart, the largest retailer on the entire planet, was generating more profit. Walmart, with almost 15 times the sales of M&S. And yet somehow, M&S was nearly keeping pace. Sir Richard Greenbury, as quoted in Judy Bevan's definitive account of the company's rise and fall, said it himself, "We couldn't believe it. We thought we were geniuses." That sentence. Right there. That's where it starts to go wrong. Because at exactly the moment M&S was being celebrated as the greatest retailer Britain had ever produced, quietly and without fanfare, the world was changing around them. New stores were opening with shabby fittings and undertrained staff. Customers were noticing. And out on the edges of the high street, small, nimble competitors were reading those customers very carefully. Next was growing. Zara had arrived from Spain. H&M was coming. And Asda had started selling clothes, cheap, decent clothes, alongside the weekly grocery run. M&S shrugged. M&S had seen off competition before. M&S was a £1 billion machine. But then, by the autumn of 1998, everything changed. Half-year results landed and profits had dropped by 23%. The first serious fall since the Second World War. Greenbury, who weeks before had been lauded across the business press, stood before the nation and said, "It's a bloodbath out there on the clothing front. Business has fallen off a cliff. Gone. In a season. Not just the profits, the confidence, the certainty. That sense that M&S simply could not fail, because Britain needed it too much to let it." Body, Theme 5, What We Lost. The human cost. Here's what the numbers don't tell you. When M&S began to lose its way through the late 90s and into the 2000s, it wasn't just shareholders who noticed. It was Doris, in Cardiff, who had bought her daughter's school uniform there every September for 12 years, and suddenly found the quality wasn't what it had been. It was the retired schoolteacher in Sheffield who went in looking for a sensible wool jumper, the kind he'd bought there every winter for 30 years, and came out empty-handed, because the rails were full of things he didn't recognise and couldn't feel good about. The St. Michael label survived until the year 2000. And when it disappeared, something quietly enormous disappeared with it. A promise, a standard, a version of Britain that believed good things should be well made, honestly priced and built to last. The shop didn't close, but something inside it did. resolution and reflection, final 60-90 seconds. We had less back then, fewer choices, narrower rails, one type of chicken korma in a foil bag, not 47 varieties with hashtags. But somehow it felt like more. M&S in the 1970s wasn't just a shop. It was a weekly act of trust between a nation and its best-loved retailer. A hand on your shoulder saying, "We've checked this, so you don't have to." A label that whispered, "Buy this, and it'll still be here in a decade." A frozen meal that said, "The world is bigger than you think, and you deserve to taste it." Today's M&S is not useless in the literal sense. The food halls are still something. The Percy Pig aisle has its charms. But the soul, that unbreakable, unspoken contract between M&S and the British people, that was broken somewhere between the billion-pound boardroom and the decision to stop listening to the woman rubbing a sleeve between her thumb and forefinger. She knew. She always knew. If you experienced M&S in its golden years, the Saturday queues, the St. Michael labels, the boil-in-the-bag korma that felt like a tiny miracle on a weekday evening, you know exactly what I mean. If this brought back memories, share it with someone who remembers. Someone who still has a St. Michael cardigan at the back of a wardrobe somewhere and can't quite bring themselves to throw it out. Please subscribe to keep these stories alive. We're telling the real story of Britain, one shop, one street, one Saturday morning at a time. And drop a comment below. What do you remember most about your local Marks and Spencer? Was it the food, the clothes, or just that feeling of walking through those doors? Tell us. We'd love to know.